Hello Dub Nation, it's always a thrill to connect with you, especially as we're about to reveal the latest news that could shape the fate of our beloved Golden State Warriors. But before we dive into this whirlwind of information, let me make a friendly request. Show us some love by clicking the like button to strengthen our bond, and hey, if you are not subscribed yet, join our channel for a thrilling and emotional journey. Don't forget to turn on notifications to stay ahead of the game. Warriors veteran unexpectedly seen as bold trade target for league's basement dwellers. While nearly everyone on the Golden State Warriors roster might find themselves in trade talks this offseason, the overwhelming sentiment is that Stephen Curry and Draymond Green are simply inseparable. The duo's on-court chemistry remains unmatched, leading to a widespread belief that the Warriors cannot and will not trade Green, despite the persistent headaches he's caused the franchise in recent years. Surprisingly, Golden State Warriors veteran Draymond Green has been identified as an ambitious trade target for the Detroit Pistons this offseason. Green might have missed 21 games this season due to 2 separate suspensions, but there's no strong sense that Golden State will cut ties with the 4-time champion just a year into the 4-year contract he signed 12 months ago. Yet, Green's place on the team isn't entirely secure, according to Grant Hughes from Bleacher Report, who recently highlighted the veteran forward as a bold trade target for the struggling Detroit Pistons. With up to $64 million in cap space, Detroit could easily absorb Green's $24.1 million salary without needing to send anything back other than sweeteners to the tax-stricken Golden State Warriors. This assumes the Pistons are still in the market for veterans to accelerate their prolonged rebuild, and the Dubs are fed up with Green's disruptive behavior enough to cut him loose as a cost-saving measure, Hughes explains. Hughes' proposal has merit, given the Warriors' expressed desire to reduce payroll, coupled with the Pistons' need for a proven veteran presence to instill a winning culture. A move to Detroit would also be a homecoming for Green, who was born in Michigan and played for years of college basketball there. However, beyond the homecoming angle, it's hard to see the 34-year-old finding motivation with a young, rebuilding team that posted a league-worst 14-68 record this season. Ultimately, the decision wouldn't be Green's to make, but it's hard to envision Golden State pulling the trigger on this deal despite their financial concerns. The Warriors are likely to dodge the second tax apron depending on what happens with Klay Thompson and Chris Paul this offseason, while Andrew Wiggins would probably be moved before Green if further salary cuts are needed. Additionally, it's improbable the Pistons would part with significant draft assets, especially without heavy protections, given their precarious situation. Moreover, it's questionable whether Detroit would want Green as their culture setter, considering his string of off-court issues in recent seasons. A few more serious indiscretions might push the Warriors to consider moving on from Green, but they don't seem to be at that point yet, let alone willing to settle for just draft picks in return. Makes perfect sense. Another young playoff team floated for Warriors free agent. The Orlando Magic has been strongly linked to Golden State Warriors veteran Klay Thompson this offseason, but they might not be the only young playoff team interested in the 5X All-Star. Despite a disappointing year that saw him move to the bench in the second half of the season, Thompson's elite shooting ability will undoubtedly attract rival teams needing more perimeter threats. One such team could be the Oklahoma City Thunder, with the rising Western Conference contender identified as a potential destination for Thompson by Chris Herring of ESPN. Rising Oklahoma City Thunder, an ideal destination for Golden State Warriors free agent Klay Thompson. While Oklahoma City's surge to the top of the West this season could be motivation enough for Thompson, Herring also believes the Thunder can offer a contract length the Warriors might be unwilling to match. He would need considerable incentive to leave the Warriors, who appear determined to make one final push with their championship core. But perhaps the Thunder, who are still a few years away from facing the punitive luxury tax aprons due to their youth, could structure a deal with Thompson that includes more years than Golden State would agree to, Herring explains. Herring highlights that the Thunder would make a lot of sense for Thompson from an on-court perspective. They could provide him with a starting role alongside Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, allowing him to play alongside another MVP-caliber guard, much like he has throughout his career with Stephen Curry. For the Thunder, having an elite shooter like Thompson is a far better option than Josh Giddey, who they might consider moving on from in the coming months. Even defensively, Thompson might face less pressure in OKC compared to Golden State. Lou Dort would still be the primary perimeter defender, and Chet Holmgren's shot-blocking ability could help mitigate some of Thompson's defensive concerns. Many of Thompson's recent struggles stem from the pressure of being the Warriors' second offensive option. With the Thunder, he could be the third or fourth option behind Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, and possibly even Holmgren. While the Thunder's previous veteran addition, Gordon Hayward, didn't pan out, they could strike gold with Thompson, who remains an impactful player. His playoff and championship experience would be invaluable for a still very young team. Stephen Curry's epic reaction to Patrick Mahomes' high school basketball highlights. Before athletes become stars in their respective sports, many fall in love with a variety of competitions as they grow up. Tim Duncan swam while towering over his peers, and LeBron James was an elite wide receiver. Patrick Mahomes is no exception. The Kansas City Chiefs star quarterback was an elite athlete before being drafted by both the MLB and NFL. His impressive basketball skills as a youngster even caught the attention of Stephen Curry. The legendary Golden State Warriors guard was left in awe by what he saw. You read that right. Patrick Mahomes was a standout basketball player in high school. This revelation surprised many, including Stephen Curry. Upon watching the footage, Curry was initially skeptical that the player in question was indeed the Chiefs quarterback, as reported by NBA on ESPN. "I was about to compliment how fluid he was. No way," Curry remarked upon being informed that it was Patrick Mahomes. Eventually, Curry recognized that the Chiefs leader could indeed play basketball. He then broke down Mahomes' playing style, noting both his strengths and areas for improvement. "I had no idea Pat Mahomes had game. He looks pretty comfortable near the trees, as we call it in the paint. It seems like he has good pocket presence, solid footing. His creativity, using double-step moves to find a gap and attack with his body, is impressive. He doesn't seem to shy away from physicality. Overall, he's quite complete, but, the jumper needs some work," Curry analyzed. Parallels between the Warriors guard and the Chiefs quarterback. Playing point guard in basketball and quarterback in football are remarkably similar. In both the NFL and NBA, these positions orchestrate the offense and are often responsible for making game-changing plays. When all options are covered, both Mahomes and Curry share a common mindset: they won't hesitate to score themselves if their teammates are locked down. This trait in Mahomes' high school basketball play is something Curry admires. It might also explain why Mahomes excels in the NFL and is on track to become one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. "We always have an option. I think that's how Pat sees the game. For me, as a point guard, that's how you try to feel. You always have the option to take the ball where you want," Curry concluded. This just goes to show that Mahomes could very well have been drafted into the NBA, NFL, and MLB. If he had pursued hockey or soccer, he might have been hailed as the greatest multisport athlete ever. Draymond Green, Golden State Warriors star, issues public apology to Stephen A. Smith. In a recent podcast appearance, Golden State Warriors star Draymond Green criticized ESPN broadcaster Stephen A. Smith. According to Green, he lost respect for Smith because the renowned analyst did not defend him when he faced harsh criticism throughout the season. Stephen A. Smith quickly responded with his own remarks, as this story, unsurprisingly, took on a life of its own. Golden State Warriors news: Draymond Green and Stephen A. Smith exchange words. During an appearance on Shaq's The Big Podcast, Green expressed his displeasure with Smith's actions. According to the former Defensive Player of the Year, "Stephen A. really pissed me off." Smith wasted no time responding to Green's accusations, dismissing the notion of having any unfair bias for or against Draymond. Draymond Green apologizes. Initially, Green did not respond to Smith's rebuttal. That changed on Tuesday night when the Warriors star publicly apologized, admitting his mistake. "Shaq, I was on your podcast, The Big Podcast, and you mentioned Stephen A.," Green said during the TNT broadcast of Game 4 between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Dallas Mavericks. "I said something that didn't come out the way I intended, so I want to apologize to him. I said it publicly. I was wrong about that. I apologize." Stephen A. Smith is likely to appreciate the sincere apology from Green, putting an official end to what turned out to be a brief and unnecessary mini-rivalry.